can we implement?
Right.
And I think it's really going to come down to getting our planning done, getting our plans in place, and then sticking to those plans moving forward. And we're going to see a lot of improvement.
Did I pretty much capture when I told the people who you were about my incompetence and slowing you down?
I'm still mad at you though.
What for?
Because when Vina said that she don't know if she's gonna keep me or fire me, you didn't step in and say, "Hey, I'm part of the deal." I mean, it's a package deal.
Oh. Well, James unfortunately is my sounding board. So when I'm venting, I'm always venting to him. Like, okay, are we ready to start?
Are we live? Are we on Facebook? All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is our weekly live training.
Did you say Buckham?
No, I said welcome, everybody.
Oh, welcome. I thought
you said okay. Welcome, everybody. Feels like the radio show that we do.
Yeah.
But this is our weekly live training every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. We are in a special location today. We're actually about an hour and a half outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And we're on, Thames Ford Lake is where we are. And what we're doing here, for one, like we do every week, help us out, drop a comment, let us know where you're tuning in from. But where we are at a mastermind group.
Right.
And we arrived here Monday. We'll be heading out back home on Friday.
Yep.
And this has just been an awesome couple of days so far, and we still have a couple of days left.
Yeah. And one of the things that this is RIA leaders across the country that we come to every quarter. And we got to go to the local RIA meeting, which is invaluable. If you can go to a local RIA meeting, you want to go to a local RIA meeting. And in fact, we thought we would kind of follow their main topic for tonight. So what was their main topic?
So guys, grab a pen, take some notes. At the end, we're gonna have a couple of minutes for some questions. But what we're gonna be talking about, we have a special guest with us tonight. By the way, his name is Dave Corey. Corsi. I apologize. Dave is joining us. He's one of the RIA leaders, and he's from New Jersey. So tell a little bit about yourself.
Hi, first I want to thank you for having me on. My name is Dave Corsi, as we've said. I'm from New Jersey. I am the president of the Metro Real Estate and Investors Association, and we cover northern and central New Jersey. Which
How
is
did
a very
you get out of
area.
New Jersey? Did they let you climb the fence? And
Yeah, I advocate sometimes that states like New Jersey, they should have to put a fence around us so we do not come into other states and pollute them with some of our wacky views. So
yeah.
I just want to say that from the get-go.
Well, what is your real estate background?
Okay, my real estate background, I got involved in real estate in 1980. By getting my real estate license. While in college, I was in business administration. They offered you to be able to take the real estate license, and I took it not with the intent, even back then, to go show people houses and such. But I always had in the back of my mind about investing. My family, I come from a family of builders and entrepreneurs, so it was kind of a natural fit for me. And then approximately a year and a half, 2 years later, like around 1981, 82, the gentleman by the name of Robert Allen had written a book called Nothing Down. And one night, 1 o'clock in the morning, I was watching late night TV, and he was interviewed. It wasn't an infomercial at that time, but he was being interviewed. And he's talking about buying houses, renting them out, making the positive cash flow, and I was hooked.
Right.
I was waiting, and then I learned more, and they said that they do a 3-day real estate investment seminar. So I'm waiting for them to come to my neck of the woods. They didn't, but I saw another one, an ad in the paper for Al Lowry, who did something very similar, and he had a 3-day real estate investor course.
Dr. Al Lowry.
Dr. Al Lowry, $595. So I went to the Lowe's Hotel in Teaneck, New Jersey. It was in December 1982. And what happened was at the very end of that meeting, they said, we're starting what we call a Lowry group.
Right.
They were Allen groups and Lowry groups throughout the country.
Rand groups.
Rand for Robert Allen, and then there were the Lowry groups.
Right.
So what I did was they said, we're starting a group, and if you want to join, this way we could help one another and go
Yeah.
from there. And I thought, sounds like a great idea, because you learned a lot, but you still knew you were going to need to have somebody else who understood. You wanted somebody that would talk your language. Like if I went home and started talking about this, they would have said, what? Whereas I wanted somebody I could talk to who's speaking my language about
Right.
real estate. So I joined, and that was December 1982. And
That's
40 years later, I am the president of that group.
you and I had in 1982 I went to an event with Robert Allen, and it wasn't Robert Allen because he basically had sold his license by then, and it was another group teaching it. But what he taught, his book was wonderful. I loved his book because he had the matrix in the book, and it was just, and there was nothing else out there like that. And then I joined the Rand group, and pretty shortly got folded into the Rich Club. But Al Lowry is like, he's over 90 years old now.
He passed away last year.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, we were so personally, because we would have him come out to our
all the
group,
way to the end.
and he was a real gentleman. He was a great man, terrific fellow.
What a great person to meet. I'm so honored to meet him.
Right.
And then, then I found out later on here that you and I both have something else, and two other things in common. One is we just love history, both of us. And the other thing is we're Jack Miller alumni.
Right. And does everyone know who Jack Miller is?
If they're around me very much, they hear me talk about it.
Okay.
Jack
But I
Miller
could
and Jimmy
give you-
Napier.
And I could give you a little background. So how I did then was I got into what we considered affordable housing. And New Jersey, even back then, was pricier than most of the country, but there were some pockets that were affordable. And I lived right outside New York City. But 90 miles away across from the river from Philadelphia is a town called Camden, New Jersey. And you could buy row houses there for $15,000. And you could rent them at the time for $550, $575.
That's pretty good.
You'd pencil it out and say, my God, I'm a financial genius. It didn't quite work out that way. I've learned valuable lessons about when you buy areas thinking you're going to gentrify it. Maybe it will work out.
First of all,
Maybe it
that never works. You're not going to gentrify it. It may do it on its own.
And I'm a young kid, and my brother and my brother-in-law were my partners. And it was, until you've been to Camden, New Jersey, you have not lived. And so what happened in 1987, I don't know if anybody, Sonny Bloch?
I don't know.
Sonny Bloch was a radio guy. His grandfather had sold a lot of the land to Walt Disney, Lake Bonita Vista. He caught on who was buying the land, so they made a killing down there. He became
that's happening again.
Where?
I'm not going to say it on the air. They can find out for themselves. I'll tell you, because I know exactly where it's happening.
He became a big radio host in New York AM radio, and these people thought he was Moses. I mean,
he was a real estate guy. Oh,
he did know stuff about real estate. But to make a long story short, he also worked on the other side of the law bit and was taking kickbacks from all the vendors he had, and he was getting people to give him money to buy radio stations, and they knew him as super successful. He was going down to places like Honduras and buying a radio station for $20,000, but he was raising $2 million to buy it. The rest was going into his pocket.
Well, that's profit. Isn't that
Well,
profit?
not the way he
Unless
did.
you don't disclose.
He did not disclose. And to make a long story short, what happened was there was a front page article, either was on the Daily News of New York or the New York Post, where they were interviewing him. And it turned out he had gotten word that they were investigating him. He ran to either, I think it was Haiti, and he was still doing it from a mountaintop in Haiti. And you read the article, and it was kind of like, nah, no extradition treaty, you can't get me. A fellow who was in our group, who was an experienced guy who knew Sonny personally, called me up one night. He goes, Dave, he goes, you know how Sonny, you read that article? I said, yeah. He goes, well, the feds just came out of a meeting. They're going to arrest him tonight. I said, well, there's no extradition treaty. He said, they don't care. They were so ticked off when they read that article. I thought he was kind of blowing smoke. Yeah, okay, George, whatever. I wake up the following morning, turn on the news. There's Sonny Bloch at Newark Airport with his hands in handcuffs. He was right.
Well,
They went and got him.
See, we know Israel does that all the time, right? And
Exactly.
so apparently we took a
So-
lesson.
But the point I apologize. I should explain why I brought up Sonny Bloch was one great thing Sonny Bloch did was he had these ultimate seminars in New York. We'd have over 1,000 people on West 57th Street. And I went to a few of them. I went to this one and it was 2 speakers he had there. One by the name of John Schaub
Oh, yeah.
and the other was Jimmy Napier. And that turned my world around because I listened to John Schaub and he was talking about buying nicer houses
Making it
in
big on
nice
little
areas,
deals.
making it big on little deals.
Yeah.
And that I just absorbed that.
Wait a
And
minute, say that again. We just glazed over that. Say that to the audience so they can hear it again.
Well, first of all, both those guys changed my life too. And I was so lucky. Schaub is still alive. Napier's passed away. But making it big on little deals. And what I think what people do is they see a commercial deal, they chase it for 2 years, they never convert it. Meanwhile, Dave and I have done 4 deals and that changes our life forever. And
gives
I
you the
wasn't smart
freedom.
enough. I just happened to come across those guys at the right time. I wasn't smart enough to know they were right.
it was just the grace of God that I was there
Yeah.
that day and saw them and it clicked. And I listened to him and said, this is the real world. This makes so much sense. It was so much different. And from there, starting out in real estate, there were 4 guys who were started in seminars who were really, they are it. And 2 of them are still the tops. It was Jack Miller, who's now deceased, John Schaub, Jimmy Napier, deceased, and of course, Peter Fortunato. And
Well, 2 of those guys are still around. And if you don't go to those, like,
John
and Peter's doing a thing in December in Tampa, I'm going to go. I'm going to be going to
Right.
Peter's stuff on a regular basis. And it's not just Peter that's the genius. It's the people that are there.
You're doing a different caliber. For you guys who are used to watching gurus come out and try to schmooze you with talking about if you buy their program, that's not Peter Fortunato and it's also not John Schaub.
Right.
You go there right from the beginning, you realize this is different. You're actually talking real deals, real situations,
Real
whole different
problems,
world.
real
Absolutely.
solutions. Not like, hey, you go out and you're a millionaire next day. And that's not real. It doesn't happen. But the blueprint these guys have followed and grown and improved.
And I will tell you this on record, Peter Fortunato is the smartest person I've ever met in my life. It's indescribable.
Can I
all
tell
that
you a
there's to
story
be.
about Peter? So
Absolutely.
Actually, let's go ahead and jump in because I'm sure that they've got their pen and paper ready to go.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm going to actually give these guys a scenario that we actually picked up on the other night out here. There was a meeting and there was a panel of 4 panelists that were up on the stage and they were asked the same question. And in fact, Dave was actually up there on the panel. So the question that I'm going to ask these guys is, Dave, if you woke up this morning and you were stripped of everything, the only thing you had was like a 1-bedroom, studio kind of apartment. You had, basic living expenses. Okay. But you had your knowledge. You still had your knowledge that you have today. How would you start over and build back to what you have today?
Okay. First thing I would do is determine a game plan, which again would be, okay, my view, single family houses, but you have to determine yours. Get a game plan. Then the first thing I would do is figure what area can I do this and be successful in within the area that I'm living in. Then I would start learning values, market values. I want to know what the after repair value of a property is and what it can rent for. Those are the 2 numbers that key everything in real estate if you're doing investment rental property. And with that being said, then I would be not going to a guru. I'd be not talking to people. You hear the old thing about knocking on doors. It doesn't even have to be knocking on doors, but you have to get out and talk to people in the neighborhood you're interested in. And it's a conversation. It's not like, James, do you have a house to sell? What do you want? It's, hi, hey, James, how you doing? My name's Dave. What's your name? Dude, I'm interested in this area. Do you know anybody who might be looking to sell a house? And you do that. And James, you build it up. And it's like what realtors do. That becomes your farm. You just don't do it one time because they're going to forget you. But if James sees me all the time there and all the other people, James starts looking at me like an old friend. We could be talking about the Astros. We could be talking about anything. You're building rapport with people. And that's where your deals and opportunity will come. Especially in a hot market, there will still be deals, but they're not going to be in the MLS. They're not going to be through your local realtor. When the market softens, those do become viable. When a market is hot, you want to find where James told me, where Dave, Millie, who lived 5 doors away, passed away, and her kids live in Colorado.
You're
That's
looking
my
for the
opportunity.
situation.
Yeah.
The situation. Exactly. And that's what I would do.
Okay. So Ray, same question. You wake up today and you're stripped of everything. You're in a studio apartment, infested with roaches and everything. You're barely making enough to where you can cover your living expenses, but you still have the knowledge that you have today.
Right.
How would you rebuild what you have today?
To build assets as quickly as I can, because I like to buy and hold, so that would be my goal. I think you hear the saying, your network is your net worth. You got to build that network. You got to talk to people who are on the streets every day. You can literally, and I learned this from Jack Miller, you can go door to door knocking. You can say, hey, what's going on? Do you know any empty houses? Do you know anybody that's moving? Whatever. People, the great thing about houses is they're never static. They're always changing. They're either people are getting more entrenched or people are trying to figure out how to get out of it. And it's because there's taxes, there's repairs, there's insurance. And people a lot of times are like, they're hemorrhaging. And they need somebody to come in and just take over the problem. And so I would do that. I would talk to anybody that's talking to people that are motivated on a regular basis. I mean, and I told you this other day, you and I were talking about it, and it was like, every time I get in the field, I figure out how to make money because I know what questions to ask, and I just ask those questions.
So how would you said that you like to buy and hold,
Right.
And you would be going to talk to those people and you're looking for motivated sellers and everything.
Right.
Okay. How would you get the money though to acquire those properties?
So we just have enough money to eat on and sleep somewhere, right?
And another factor that I did forget to mention, maybe I did, but out of being wiped out, that includes your contacts. You don't have the current contacts.
You don't
It doesn't, you don't need them. You start over. And
You're completely starting over. How would you go get the money? You go out and you talk to a seller and you've got a pretty good potential deal.
I can tell you, first of all, I know there's RIA groups in every town, sometimes multiple. I would almost bet I can get a deal every time I go to a RIA meeting, just by knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to JV, and I'm very likely could even get the money for that. And a lot of times we don't need a lot of money. It's just enough to get into the deal. A lot of times people need us if we're the hustler and we can go out there, we can use somebody that's say older and their time's more valuable to them than increasing their net worth. We find out those people. So it's part of our calm. What is calm, right? It's knowledge, attitude, leads, money. Right? So if I talk to you, I'm going to find out, do you have leads? Do you have money? Right? And if you got money, I'm going to tell you how I can make your money work. If you got leads, I want to find out what can I do to fix that problem. And I would go to every friggin' RIA meeting. I'd go where investors go. I'd go where sellers go. What he said I really like is pick your targets, because I've also it sounds like him and I did the exact same thing. We picked the slums thinking it's going to gentrify.
They give you the numbers and it seduces you, and then you find out it's not
the
like it is on paper.
The paper lies.
Sorry, Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times that seller is your money, because for instance, let's say mom died, they're going to put that money, the kids live in Colorado, they're going to put that money in the bank. What is the bank paying right now?
1% or less.
Right.
If you're lucky.
Now, we go to them and say, tell you what, I can pay you, let's say the house, keep numbers simple, $100,000 is the house. Right? I can pay you $1,000 a month for the next 100 months. I am quickly amortizing that deal. Now, I remember what I said before. I know my numbers. I know I can rent it for $1,400. My PIT I total, and that would be about $1,150, $1,200. I'm making $200 cash flow. Now, to
Yeah,
get
your
money
purchase
to,
price is $100,000.
right, and that could be
$1,000
the
a month.
retail price,
Okay.
but that's still an incredible deal.
Yeah.
And a lot of the best deals I've ever done were people where it wasn't a money issue. It was a property issue where they live far away and they have a ton of money. They just want somebody like they trust. So you have to build that trust. You have to do what you say you will do. You know, a lot of times people come out with these 10-page contracts that they went to a guru with weasel clauses. I give you a one-page contract. I am here to buy your house. I instill confidence that I will perform the way I say. You have to move heaven and hell to make sure you make those payments because that's your credibility on the line. And if I'm taking subject to in a situation, I want it to where when they're done, their credit went from lousy to great because I was making the payment for the last 15 years.
You know, listening to you talk, Dave, is you said you got to get people to know, like, trust you, and then you're going to throw a 10-page contract in there.
Right.
With
With all kinds of weasel clauses.
Yes, that don't go together, right?
Right. I really, the
Keep
only
it
thing I
simple.
look for that I'm worried about is in New Jersey, basically, is there an oil tank? Anything else I've already figured, I know my repair values, I know what the after repair value will be. To kind of piggyback on the other part of that, you said we don't really have any money. We're talking long-term growth, which is what makes you wealthy, the long-term deals. But for the quick deals, I would be doing some quick flips. In other words, it's two businesses. One is buy, fix, and flip or wholesale. The other is my long-term. The fix and flip give me money to live on today. Those properties that every month pay down a little bit or in $1,000, pay down a lot in 10 or 15 years, I can have acquired enough property that I can do whatever I want the rest of my life.
And that's if you're not killing yourself. If you're
Right.
killing yourself, it can be
Do it
less.
quicker.
You know, somebody asked a question. It's like, how do I make $1 million in equity or cash in a year? And I figured out what the present value of a $500 a month cash flow forever, which say 30 years,
Right.
at 7% interest, and that comes out to $75,000. So when you put, that's present value.
Right.
So if you create that cash flow, you literally just wrote your retirement account a check for $75,000. You make that deposit and it's there.
Right. And the key is I'm always telling my group, because they all love to refinance, because some guru told them they have dead equity. It's not dead equity. Please don't do that.
I'm glad you're talking about that.
What it is that is growing your net worth
First of all,
every month.
say what debt equity is.
Okay.
So in other words,
Debt
equity is
right.
money sitting there.
Every month, let's say I bought the house, we bought the house for $100,000. I'm making $1,000 a month mortgage payment. Doing that and the numbers we're talking about, I'm amortizing at almost $700-800 a month. Dang. Think about it. It might be, the house may even break even. So people are like, what's the big deal?
Wait, slow down a little bit more.
Okay.
So when you say you're amortizing $700 or $800 a month,
out of that $1,000
But what
month
is that?
payment, I'm paying down my principal. So I go from $100,000. After the first month, I now owe $99,300.
perfect.
If you take out a 30-year mortgage, all I might have paid off was $40. I am paying that thing down so fast. So because let's make it $1,000 a month and I'm paying off $1,000. So you understand the concept.
It's close.
Right. In 1 year, I've already built in 12,000 equity. And now
That's if there's no appreciation.
I'm getting to that. And now I have, let's say 2% appreciation. I'm conservative when I do my numbers. I'm thinking I'll factor in 2%.
You know, across the nation last year is 20%.
Right. And that's going to die quickly. But so I'm conservative. I used to show people the power of what we're talking about. So if I appreciate a property at 2% a year compounding, that means that property is now worth 102. In a couple of years, that starts snowballing. So let's say 10 years down the road, a 2% appreciation is going to have that property at about 150 grand. That a tenant paid off. But if I suddenly went to somebody who said, Dave, you have debt equity.
Wait, before you go there. So it appreciated to 150.
Right.
And then what is the mortgage at that point?
10 years, zero.
Zero. So the net
cash flow comes to me.
Right.
Now, the key is
the total equity at this point
is 150.
150.
And I only made, let's say I only put
how much of that did you pay out of your pocket?
10,000. Let's say I give him 10% down.
Right.
So my $10,000.
Now wait a second. You had no money. So where'd you get that 10K?
I've got this buddy James who I did an equity deal with. James, how, you've got that great job. You're a lawyer. You're suing everybody under the sun. Do you want to do something good? Do you want to do something good?
Or you got the trillions of dollars in IRA earning 0%.
Right. But the point is, if I don't have the money, I will bring in, you mentioned before, equity partners, JVs. That's an equity partner. So he would put up to $10,000 and he would get 50% of the deal.
Maybe.
Right. Well, let's keep it clean for everybody,
Okay.
50%. So at the end, his $10,000 investment has now grown to $75,000.
Does he like you at this point?
He loves me. He loves me. If he wasn't married,
Does
he'd be
he have-
looking to date me.
Does he have more money for you now?
Whoa.
Does he have more money for you
Right.
now?
Exactly.
So you're growing your private lending.
Right. And remember what he said, IRA, tax-free. If it's in a Roth, he's already paid the tax. As long as Joe Biden and company don't screw around with it, time will tell. But going under the laws currently, that thing is growing tax-free for him. If you think about what we've done, the danger would have been though, if this gentleman was one of those sweet talking gurus who comes up and says, Dave, you have dead equity. It's not working. Why don't you refinance? Now I've got a property I'm quickly refinancing. Let's say he came to me in year 6 and I now owe 40,000 because it's worth now 135 at that point. And you could go to one of these guys and I will refinance you for $110,000 at 4. Let's say the mortgage interest rate is still good at 4%. Everybody goes, well, that's great. It's tax-free money. But I now have to pay it back. I'm within 4 years of having that property free and clear, where him and I are going to be splitting a great monthly cash flow.
You went
I've
from
just
paying.
started
you went-
back to a 30-year mortgage. That's insanity.
The other thing is you went from paying down the debt by $700 or $800 or $900 a month
To
to paying at
50s,
$30 a month.
And now I'm back to a 30-year thing.
Right.
I'm not that young anymore.
Right, right.
So
You know,
I want to kind of point something out.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to gloss over it, okay? Because it's kind of
by
the
the
main
way, did
idea.
you see two old guys with super passion and energy?
I do.
Because when you win the lottery, you talk about the lottery different after that.
Mhm.
Right.
And just a little quick note here.
Yeah.
You started a year before I was born. You started a year after I was born. Speaking of old guys.
Oh, I
So-
feel old. That great
So
lady.
you mentioned that you found me to
Right.
put up that $10,000 that
Right.
you need. Okay.
Right.
Where did you find me?
I went to the RIA he mentioned, or I might have gone to a title company and said, hey, do you have any guys, looking for money? I might go to somebody who's a facilitator of 1031 transactions, which I'm sure some of your people know about. But the point is, it's a deal where they now have a lot of money and they got to get into another deal and fast. And
So-
this could be heaven sent for them. I am a savior for them.
Another thing that I saw that really just kind of, you know how you know certain things, but then when you see it, it kind of like, whoa, it magnifies it.
That's a 2x4 moment.
The, yeah, 2x4 moment.
That's when somebody hits you over
The
head with
thing
a
that I saw
2x4.
happen the other night is one of the speakers asked the audience to raise your hand if you were looking for money for your deals, if you had leads that you need money for. So that was the first group, and then they put their hand, they
How
raised
many
their hands.
were raised?
It was about half the audience.
So what does that tell us right there?
That there's people out there getting deals,
And they're ready to JV with you,
They're
and
ready.
they're partners. And
Yeah.
that's why you need to hang around people doing what you want to do.
So the second question, so the first group, they raised their hands and then, they said, okay, put your hands down. Then the next question was, who has money to lend? And about another third to a half, wasn't quite half of the audience raised their hand. That created an opportunity for the first group to look and see who raised their hand for the second question. And they can go start talking to those people
Right.
and start building the relationship.
And
Okay.
and there was somebody there also who could mentor, who's an experienced person who was going to have the new person help them with leads and of JV as well.
Yeah. It's all there, and you just got to hang around the people. Different people have different problems. A 70-year-old guy or lady that's been successful in whatever their endeavor is, they just imagine having $1 million in the bank and earning 1%. I mean, that's
Right.
$10,000 a year.
Right.
You're a millionaire and you can only make 10,000, and somebody else comes along and says, well, I can give you 6% or 7%. You don't think they want that?
500 a month
Yeah.
as opposed, which would be 6,000 a year less than somebody's getting 500 or 600 a year. It's a no-brainer. It
yeah.
can change, especially for people who need income to live on
Right,
every month. If
right.
they trust you, again, think about it. If they
No
trust you
trust
and
in life.
know you will do it for them, they are much better off with you than the bank.
And a lot of people, they sell out partners, they sell out friends, they rip each other off on their first deal.
Yeah.
And all those guys are gone. None of those guys last. None of those guys ever get to the finish line. And you always got to remember who brought you to the dance. You got to take care of people. You got to have your reputation's got to, if I have a private lender, the first guy that always gets paid is the private lender. The private, you take care of them because they are the goose that lays the golden egg.
Right.
So-
When you we were talking before about making it big on little deals, and I equate in life, everything eventually to me becomes baseball. Just me. And what I always stress to people, focus on singles and doubles, the little
Yeah.
deals. Those are the ones that will get you wealthy. If you sit around waiting for the grand slam in the bottom of the ninth to win the World Series, you may occasionally get one of those, but it will not sustain you.
Well,
And
and
it's
singles and
okay.
you
doubles.
won't stay on the team. They'll
Darn
kick
right.
you off team because you won't have enough good, you
Right.
won't score enough.
It's okay to take advantage when that pitcher leaves that pitch out over the plate.
If you get
Like we
yeah.
actually we've had one of those.
Yeah.
That big wholesale
Yeah.
deal.
Your very first wholesale deal.
yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
left it there and
Right. You know
and-
what we're talking about, guys? Which a lot of guys know the name. We're talking about doing with real estate what Warren Buffett does with stocks. If you understand, we're doing exactly the same thing. Warren Buffett has a long-term mentality. And once you start letting the power of compounding work for you instead of against you, it's magical.
yeah, I think if you have to work to make money in the transaction, that's the wrong kind of transaction. You have to make money, you have to work to get the transaction to do the work. And the transactions that where you can buy and hold them, you set up these structures like what you talked about, that can last. Your children can take that. They never have to give it away.
I have mortgages I'm holding for people on certain properties we've sold and held seller financing that are 50, 55 years. I have options to either sell something or buy something that are 50 years. Will I be around in 50 years? Highly doubtful, but I always tell them when they laugh and go, you really think you'll be around that long? I say, no, but I have children and I have grandchildren.
Other things, we talked about one kind of deal, but there's other things. If a person has a problem, you can solve that problem. A lot of times you can manage other people's problems for them. Like, for example, in most states, you can't property manage without a license, but you can do a master lease or a sandwich lease. Probably one of the deals that we made the most money on ever was a master lease, and we kept it in place for 35 years. We made an average about $700 or $800 a month for 35 years. And then the guy got tired of it and he sold it to us.
Who's the natural person to buy it?
Right. And now we own it. And we bought it. We ended up with $100,000 equity.
I'm glad
when
you
we bought it.
mentioned the master lease, because that would have been part two of when you said I came into a city, didn't know anybody. I would find out I would start looking to master lease. That's why I need to know what market rents are. And then, as I said, who is the natural person when that fellow wants to sell? I've done everything according to the book. He loves me because I've taken all that off of him. I am the natural personality too, and he's most likely going to want to hold a mortgage for me, because the other thing you have to consider, he's going to have a tax problem where Uncle Sam's going to take a big bite. He'd be better off holding financing for me. It lessens his tax load under the installment series. So it's a win-win for everyone.
And I know you volunteered to teach that class on lease options, but that's the next step over the master lease. Is like, once I put this baby in place and the guy knows and trusts and like me, will you let me buy that sometime in the future? Then you lock it up with that option. So there's so many exciting things we can do out there. And it's like, I've written, Dave, I bet you have the same exact experience. People talk about, like, how do you write the notes, the promissory notes? I go back and think of the creative things I've done in promissory notes. And it's like, and I wouldn't have that in my head if it weren't for people like Jimmy and Pete Fortunato. And it's like whatever your imagination is, you can make a note.
And you keep them simple.
Yeah.
If they're simple, it doesn't scare other people. Like we said about the contract, if you have a million weasel clauses, like I said, and you know, trust me, but I'm handing you a 10-page contract with all this cave out and tour stuff.
Right.
Same thing with the notes. Our notes are incredibly simple. Our mortgage is simple.
Right.
If I sell somebody a house, I want them to do well. If I give somebody a lease option on a house, I want them to buy it. I am not doing it trying to
No.
take advantage. I want it to work. I would venture 90 to 95% of the people we've done these options with on the selling side, they have bought the house from us. I'm happy. I want them to do well.
And that's because your plan is a long-term plan. You make the spread for a long period of time. If you get it back, you're okay with that.
Right.
But there's always like broken eggs. There's
Right.
always hardship and loss and stuff.
Another thing people should think about, let's say they needed $80,000 a year to live and be comfortable. Okay, after a while, if you're doing a lot of deals and you know you have cash or something, it might be partly that you have a regular job you
Right.
love, but you're making that 80,000. More efficient use of your time would be to find a long-term property you can buy under market, because all the money you make over and above that, Uncle Sam's going to take a big chunk.
Right.
That you're saying it's not doing me any good that way. But if I can find a house that's 20 or 30,000 under market that I'm planning on holding, I am now getting tax shelter. I'm getting all those great things from it. That would be a much more efficient and better use of my time, energy, and effort.
Yeah.
The main thing is to get connected at a RIA, your local RIA, whatever market you're in. Look up, you know, that chapter of the National RIA, and get connected with those people.
You know, James, when I went, did you go to Jimmy's stuff in Pensacola?
I never went to there or Chipley, but I've seen Jimmy quite often. I even got him to come up to New Jersey one time.
Well, when you go there and you see people doing stuff, it doesn't seem real because you're not close enough.
Right.
You got to get close. You got to follow that person around. You got to talk to them. You got to buy them lunch. And none of us want anybody to buy us lunch, but whatever it takes, you got to get near them
Right.
so that you can see that. And if it weren't, I look back, and if it weren't for people like Jimmy, because Jimmy was probably the single biggest influence in my life. If it weren't for people like Jimmy, I wouldn't have stayed in the RAND group. I wouldn't have made it. I would have been like all those other people, but I got in the RAND group, then I ended up in the Ridge Club, and I saw people doing things.
Right.
And then the next thing I know, I'm over there going to people like Jimmy, who's got a room full of people just like I want to be. And then I would sit down with them for lunch. I'd talk to them about what they're doing. At that time, there was no such thing as coaching. There was no such thing as
Right.
hard money, right? And there was no such thing as wholesaling, right?
We didn't have those terms. They just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And one of the other great things is the guys we're talking about, beware of somebody who's trying to say this real expensive guru coaching.
Right, right.
For instance, if you take a Pete Fortunato course and you have a question, you call the phone, you're talking to Pete.
Right.
He answers the phone.
Right, right.
It's a whole different world. And, you know, like some people say, why do you still like to go to a lot of those classes? Because you kind of know it. Yeah, kind of. I always pick up something new or unique at one of them. But the real thing is the camaraderie and talking to people who are doing it. And that is absolutely invaluable. It's
Dave,
like a mastermind.
one of my realization why I never stopped going to that stuff is because I was changing. I was being a different person. My deal opportunities were different. My perspective of like where I was and who I was in that deal changed and grew. And so I'd hear the same, even if I heard the same stuff, it was a different listener. And then I was like, oh my God, I could actually do that. And that was like, to me, those aha moments was what they're talking about. How does that apply to me? And in the beginning, it didn't apply. But as I got more involved and more involved, I said, oh, if I just change that, maybe I can try that. And next thing you know, I'd go back and do a master.
That's a great point, because what I did is I would look at things again. I'm in New Jersey, and a lot of things you're talking about, if I'm talking to Peter, John in Florida, I can't do in Jersey according to the laws of New Jersey. But the key is to go to those guys and extrapolate, say, okay, I can't quite do it that way, but how do I make it work in New Jersey? That is invaluable.
How do we overcome that?
How do you overcome it?
Yeah.
Or another thing is you might find somebody in that local area, because I could get a brilliant idea from Ray and be working on a deal, and I might be stuck on something, but I might take it to Dave and he might be the missing piece, or he might give me one more piece that I need, and I might go, I might have to talk to 3 or 4 people and get that deal pieced together. But being connected to the right people is going to make that happen.
Something that happened with me, Dave, is when we became the owners of San Antonio area, I was apprehensive because like I'm from Houston. I don't know the people in San Antonio. It turns out just like you and I became instant friends. And it's like when you're in this world, your values, your experiences, it's the same. And so we've actually started buying properties outside of our area. My goal is to like, hey, in fact, we bought a house in Panama City, and it's like, okay, I can make that work. I just got to find the people that talk like me
down there.
Right.
Exactly right.
So,
all right. Well, this has been really fun. We do have a few more minutes, but I want to pause. I want to mention the fact that if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. Our producer, Hal, he'll chime in and he'll let me know what the questions are, and we'll try to get those answered. So again, if you have any questions in regards to what we're talking about, whether you're just starting out, whether you're starting over, what should your step be, drop that question in the comments and we'll see what we can do about getting it answered.
I have a question for Dave, because I am playing with the same question a lot, but people ask like, when are you going to retire?
Never.
Right.
I don't consider what I do work. It's,
Right.
People ask me all the time, and I still do a lot of the physical rehab.
Yeah.
On my houses.
That's very rewarding.
And a lot of times people, when you go technically by the book, it's like, it's a bad use of your time. Not, you said everybody's different. Not for me. I get some of my best ideas when I'm sitting there doing molding, building something, tearing something out. If I'm not the kind of person who can sit in an office, I don't feel like I'm earning anything.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's right for everyone. So everybody has to find their zone. But retire.
See, I love rehabbing too. And I love having my hands on things. And the world is changing. It's like we've come from something 25, 30 years ago, but it's changing and it's always stays exciting. The difference is I don't have to do it 12 hours a day. I can do it for 2 hours a day. And then I can let the other guys, do their thing.
You start getting more picky about what you do, realizing, well, I'm not young. I can't be quite doing it. That the stamina isn't quite there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, I showed you where I got wounded by my son dropping. Justin, yes, you did drop it. Your fault. So he didn't really drop it, but yeah. So like, how would you ever quit something that you enjoy doing?
I wouldn't. It's not going to happen. To me, it's kind of again like Warren Buffett. People say, retire from what? To me, what I do isn't work. It's just part of my life. The beauty is it gave me the freedom to do what I wanted, in the sense that, and it's not always easy. We don't think it's all easy. I mean, you have your ups and down days and things, but I mean, I was able to coach baseball and softball for years. I played Santa Claus at the schools. My kids had an event. I could be there. I wasn't on somebody else's clock asking permission to go somewhere. I just did it.
And we're getting in the dark, but we're still here, right?
Yeah,
we're on the back porch.
I'm trying to figure out how to get light on this. But
I think you did.
By the way, you were here at the last mastermind here, right?
Yes.
Jerome Lewis says hello.
Oh, hey, Jerome.
I just pulled up some of the comments and Emma's watching.
Hi, Emma.
Emma's one of our star students and volunteers. Not sure if Matt's watching. I did see Lloyd.
Jerome, great marketing.
Yeah.
One of the things is like my whole life now I've gone to guys like Peter and Jack, and the camaraderie that I get with the people at those meetings, to me, that is fun. I'm hanging out with the people that have the same experiences, the same disasters, the same successes.
And one of the things I always like coach or people on is, don't go in a room where some guy's going, hey, how you doing? Hey, who wants to be rich? Raise your hand. I tell them, get out of the room. You're about to get a snow job. And I also tell them, if you talk to anybody and they tell you, I've never had a deal go wrong or nothing go sour in a deal, or everything was get out of the room. They are not doing it. But that's what kind of makes it fun. You have to figure out ways around.
I've had sub-2 gurus say, I've never had a deal called. And it's like, I've had 3 and not one of them was my fault.
Right.
So like, what am I doing different than you? Maybe you
Exactly.
made 7 mortgage payments.
only
I
that,
made 7,000.
Let's be honest. And the guys we were talking about, and other people like Dyke Spotterford and all, their full-time job is what we do. They're
Right.
not out doing seminars
Right.
every week. If a
Right.
guy's out there 50 weeks out of the year coming and talking to people about how they can get rich in real estate like them, you're thinking, well, when are they doing this real estate?
Exactly.
Beware.
In our office, it's a full-time deal. We've got like 4 rehabs going on. We've got a lot of rental property.
Something always going on.
Yeah, and now what is today? It's tax day. I mean, and on the 15th, our office is like working around the clock, getting all that stuff. I like what your comment was. Like, I don't know anything about it. I don't mess with it. I let my wife.
Well, I have a big, we're talking about history, politics. Another passion of mine is the tax code. I won't go into too much, but the one fight my wife and I have every year is when we do the taxes, and she's a brilliant bookkeeper, but she'll ask me something I don't know. I'm not detailed in that way, and all I do is start railing about the U.S. tax code. So.
Well, that's your way of getting kicked out of the office.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Fine. You talk
So
about
let
it.
me
We
see
gotta.
if we have any questions yet. No, I guess nobody has any questions so far. We do have a few more minutes left. What time is it? I think we got about another 10
5 or
minutes
10
or so that we have left.
You know,
So why don't we tell them about the bus tour that we have coming up at the end of the month?
I'm not sure if we're moving that to November or not. So
We
we
still-
got a bus tour coming up, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Well, I'll tell you one thing I learned. A bus tour is a perfect example. If the people doing the bus tour know what they're talking about, in one day, you can figure out within about 10%, estimate what the repairs are going to be. You're gonna actually see like what goes on in that investor's head. Like when we drive into a neighborhood, we can show like, hey, this is like. In fact, I had that war zone experience where like, hey, maybe it can gentrify, and it's like, lesson. Here's a lesson, and tell me if you disagree. You can fix people, you can fix houses, but you can't fix neighborhoods. So
We should buy the whole neighborhood though.
Well, that was part of the thing I really wanted to do in a place like Camden. I mean, it's got a
And how'd
good
you do?
location. Not good. We took a bath. When I was talking about losing money, we took our bath in Camden. And but the goal was, when I saw it, I said it was like right across from New York is Hoboken, and I had seen Hoboken gentrify.
Right.
So I said, gee, Philadelphia, same thing. Camden, the opportunity. And it didn't happen. And a lot of it was because of the mentality within the town.
Right.
And that's kind of when I realized socialism does not work.
One of the things I would do is like, I want to be in an area that's growing. I want to be in an area that's in the path of progress.
Write this down, guys.
Yeah, if I'm driving around and I get to pick where I'm doing the business, because I don't think that was one of the parameters, but if I get to pick, then it's going to be a growing area. It's going to be in the path of progress, and you make your money when you buy, and that deal will take care of itself. We bought a house it ended up supposed to cost us 15,000. We got them down to we got them down to 15,000, and then I got them down because we did a note and we did a discount note. We ended up paying like 9,000. It pays for 30 years. We've owned it. It pays $600 a month. It's a 1-bedroom house on its own lot and everything. Right. And it's not ever going to be worth $1 million. But you know what it's worth? It's worth $600 a month for eternity. And
it's the present value of that. There you go.
Yeah, and so if my children let that go, I'm going to come back and I'm going to stay going.
I will want it.
That's what you need. You need a few wins, and those wins last forever. And you just got to be around people like, what would you do? How would you do it? And one of the things I always say in all my PowerPoints, I put this in the first slide of the PowerPoint, and it's that we stand on the shoulders of the people that we went before us. And you, as a history buff, you know that just like I do, our forefathers were land speculators.
Absolutely.
They were out there investing. They were out there buying. That hasn't changed. And the techniques haven't changed a lot. Right. Maybe they adapt a little bit. Maybe there's a lot more variables, but it's essentially the same thing. That $600 property, and it's inflation adjusted because rents are going to go up with inflation. So that property is is just is gold. And sometimes people, let me ask you, see how you do on this trick question.
Uh-oh.
So what is your definition of a good house?
A good house is a house in a good area where I know I can put in a tenant who will be a good tenant. In other words, they don't cause problems. So it's a
Right.
nice area. And what I look for, two things. I always tell our people, are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a friend who's a girl? Or if you're a woman investor, whichever. Do you feel safe in that neighborhood?
Yeah.
If you do not feel safe, you do not buy in that neighborhood. The other thing about a good house is I kind of figure out who is going to live in that house. In other words, I'm not, it might be, for instance, is it a family? Is it the kind of thing where it's going to be a property where it's going to be three young people who have
Three roommates.
three roommates who have good paying jobs? If so, what kind of jobs are? Is it near a hospital?
Right.
Will a bunch of nurses take that
Right.
house?
Right.
Because that is so important. I find a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, well, I'll just get a house and I'll put people in. Who is it going to be? And we're not talking discrimination in the
Right.
sense of race and all that.
Right.
We're talking about you need to know, because if you're rehabbing that, you want to know, who am I rehabbing it for?
Right.
Who will that house sing to? Who is
Right.
the right person for that house? By us, I tell people, by me, quite frankly, watch what's going on in New York City. A lot of businesses are losing. A lot of my folks have houses right across the river in Jersey, and they're getting ridiculously high rents because you'll have three young
Right.
people who are
Right.
each paying $1,200 a month
Right.
in this little apartment, $3,600. I say, if those jobs leave New York and those guys lose their job, there is nobody behind them to replace. So your income will go from $3,500 a month on that apartment, maybe to
1,500.
1,600. So you have to keep that in mind. So
Well,
keep
and-
a close eye on
Right.
what's going on locally.
And if you buy bait and require that level of rent,
You're in trouble.
you're in trouble. You know, another thing is a lot of people don't realize that the single highest expense to a property owner is turnover.
Absolutely.
And so I learned, Jack Miller opened my world up when he said, basically, know who your customer is, build that product for that
them,
customer,
they don't go anywhere.
and then you don't want them to ever leave. You know, their
Right,
job
John's
is
job, same
yeah.
thing, long term. How long is your average tenant stay?
12 to 15 years.
Mine's about 15, 20.
Yeah.
And same thing. And when people move in, one important thing I do tell them on the long-term properties, we will never sell a house out from under you. And
If
for
I
a
were
great
to,
tenant, that's a great relief, because we're tired of people selling houses out from under them.
if I
then
were
they
to
have to
come to you
move.
and say, look, I want a 6-month lease, what would that? I'm
not
already
interested.
talking the wrong language, aren't I?
Right, and I tell them, I said, that's not our plan. I always have somebody higher authority I have to answer to, and
If-
Mr.
okay,
Big
I'm
is
having
looking for long
I'm
term.
having a house built and it'll be done in 6 months. Or is that okay with you?
Unless I know somebody else said, Dave, I want that house in 6 months.
Right.
Okay, now we can talk.
Right.
But normally, no, I tell them it's not really the right thing for them.
What if I'm a professional and I don't get my hands dirty?
You're not my ideal tenant. I love people who are independent minded.
I don't know if my brother's listening, but I went out of town and he was heavy in the operation on our jointly owned property. I went out of town, he rented a house, and a month later, I called the lady, she's talking about a problem. I said, well, go over to the breaker box and flip the breaker. And she says, I'm not going to touch that. And I thought, who the hell screened her? You know, if that lady is an electrician, why is she in the house?
Exactly.
Okay, so
We got so many war stories, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
So I'm about to go down a dangerous path here, but I'm going to try to not do it. But we got about 3 minutes, so y'all got to keep it short. Okay. We had a general question on a topic that is a 4-hour topic. Okay. But one of our good friends, past students, Matthew Bittner, he's on here watching, and he wanted more information about how to use IRAs. So
Right.
what is your 1 or 2 quick tip? I'm going to give him a chance too. So
Who
you got
goes
1 or
first?
2 minutes. 1 or
Okay.
2 minutes. What is your 1 or 2 quick tips for IRAs? And then it'll be his turn.
So I would do whatever I could to open up a Roth IRA as quick as I could. And then I would do anything I could to put deals in it. I would say for example, say you had $5,000, I would tell the whole world, I can put up earnest money if you'll give me 5%, 10%, an option, a first right of refusal. Give me anything you can for that earnest money, and I'll keep writing you those earnest money checks. And whatever I make goes straight into my Roth IRA. Especially Matthew, knowing Matthew, Matthew's got that long view. He's a smart guy, and that's exactly what I do. And Matthew put in the maximum amount of dollars that you make enough money, whatever the limit is, put that in and get the Roth IRA set up right away. Get it set up with a self-directed IRA custodian like Equity or Quest. Both those guys understand real estate. Get it set up immediately.
You did say you did encourage him to put as much in as possible. Is there a minimum to open, like 100, 500,
100, but 100's almost, it's tough. But I mean, I think it's 5,000 or 6,000.
It's up now. I think it's between 6 and 7.
Yeah, whatever you can do. You should borrow money, whoever you are. If you have the earned income, but you don't have the dollars, go borrow the money from somebody immediately. Put it in a Roth IRA, and then hang around people that know how to do it. And
Can I just say something there? I agree 1,000%. And then you go to Advanta, you go to Equity Trust, you go to Quincy, and he's right in. He's for Quest. Right, I have account with Quest. They have incredible free education.
Yeah.
To really learn about the Roth IRA. And do what he said, perfect, and then get educated more and more on the subject.
That's actually one of our topics that we talk about, not only on our coaching calls, but we do talk about it on our live streams every so often. Especially now, we'll probably talk about it here in the near future again because of what's going on. You got to really get the word out.
We are, in very short order, going to be living off the income from our Roth IRA. I will never ever buy anything again that's not in the retirement account. We slowly but surely have moved everything over there. We've created a significant amount of money in that account. Every dollar we make, because now I'm 59 and a half plus, so every dollar I make, I will never pay taxes again as long as I'm alive.
All right, guys. So I'm gonna do a last call for one more question. We got just a couple of minutes left. So Hal, if you see any questions, send me a text so that I can get Ray and Dave to answer the questions.
Let me tell you, Matthew beat me up on a deal. We bought the house. It was in the path of progress. And he says, Ray, can I buy you out for peanuts? And it's like not normal for me to be bought out. But he was so persistent.
He's learning from you.
I love Matthew. I mean, he's one of my heroes. He's a lot younger than me, but I love him. And I let him talk me out of it. And that $5,000 that poultry money is probably increased $50,000 in value.
So wait a minute, you can't be mad up over that because you just said I let him talk me out of it.
Yeah,
So
well, Matthew, he's
learning well.
He's got the victim mentality, or not. He's got the victim. What is
so it makes you a
story?
So it makes you a good mentor. We learn a lot from you. So and that's one of the things that we do learn is that attitude.
Yeah.
I can, I have, VAs that work for us and everything. And there's times that I'm talking to them and I'll say something. I'm like, holy crap.
Where'd I get that?
I sound like Ray. Like,
hey, I can tell you, I go out and talk to somebody about buying a property and they'll have a problem and something will come out of my brain and in my mouth on something I've never done. And it's because I was sitting at lunch with Dave and he said, hey, I did this. And that problem presents itself. And it's like, I become him because I learned from what he says. And then I might pick up the phone later and say, okay, Dave, I understand most of what you
how
said.
do I do that?
Yeah. Well, guys, I don't have any questions here. We're just about out of time. If you want any information on that bus tour, drop the comment bus tour. And I'll reach out. One of our associates will reach out and we'll get you set up on that. Very special thanks to Dave for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank Dave in the comments too, because he'll be able to see him here shortly. We're going to get him in the group. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for bringing me here to make me a better leader. Learning quite a bit. So
it's beautiful out here, isn't it?
On that note, thank you for tuning in. Thank you guys, and we'll see you Saturday on our radio show.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Hal.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Well, it's nice